Okay, good evening to all of you. I, Bhaskar Chandra Sarkar, on behalf of the Department of English, SR Fatepuria College, welcome you to our one-day national webinar on Shakespeare. And all of you have been informed that actually we received almost 500 registered participants, so we could not able to accommodate all of them in the Google Meet platform. That's why we have arranged some other platform, YouTube Live, where we can the registered participants can watch the program live. And just to begin with the program, I would now like to request our principal sir, but actually our principal sir recently lost his mother, and the Shraddh custom has not yet over. So principal sir would not be able to deliver his valuable speech to inaugurate the webinar. So he has sent his message through Word file, and one of our departmental colleague, Mr. Hasibur Rahman sir, will read out his message. And now I think Hasibur sir has already joined the group meeting. So Hasibur, now it's to you. Please read the message that was given by our principal sir.
Thanks, Bhaskar sir. As you know, I will read the message in favor of our respected principal, Dr. Suhas Roy. Can you hear me, Bhaskar sir?
You are
Can you hear
properly
me?
audible. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
Please carry on.
Okay. Good evening, my dear participating students, teachers of SR Fatehpuria College, and other participants, resource persons, and organizing faculty members. I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. I would like to express my satisfaction that the Department of English of SR Fatehpuria College has taken such a praiseworthy initiative, and convey my thanks to Sri Bhaskar Chandra Sarkar, head of the Department of English, and other fellow faculty members. I would like also to express my thanks to Dr. Milan Mandal, Coordinator IQSC, SR Fatehpuria College, for his collaborative support in organizing this webinar. The theme of the webinar has been chosen to be very much appropriate and relevant not only for the students of English literature, but also common readers. I hope this webinar will attain its objectives. All of you are requested to support us by hearing the webinar with patience. Now let me say a few words on today's webinar. Today we have been assembled for a noble purpose. One of the greatest poets of all times will be showed respect on his so-called birthday through organization of this webinar. William Shakespeare was baptized on 26 April 1564. Traditionally, his birthday is celebrated on 23rd April each year throughout the world. So we are walking on the same path today. He and his creation are still very much relevant to today's society even after more than 450 years. His plays include timeless themes such as friendship, love, and vengeance. Bruce Smith, a professor of English, opined that Shakespeare reveals a different face to different cultures and different people at different times. Ben Jonson, another noted writer, commented that Shakespeare was not of an age, but for all time. Thus, the context of Shakespeare is still relevant. Shakespeare invented about 3,000 words like bedroom, swag, uncomfortable, assassination, so on and so forth, which are added to the English vocabulary. We use lots of Shakespeare's quotes every day without knowing its origin, such as it's Greek to me, to be or not to be, green-eyed jealousy, tongue-tied, in a pickle, so on and so forth. Thus, texts of Shakespeare are still in fashion, trendy as we say in our time, At the time of Shakespeare, men were seen as much more important and respected than women, except for the queen. She allowed women in the society to be viewed equally, if not more important, than men in his place. I would like to stop here, and I wish a grand success of this program. Thanks to all.
Thank you, Hasibuddha, for reading out the message that was given by our principal sir. And really, it would be very interesting if we get him, if he will be there here to deliver this his lecture. Okay, now we move to Dr. Milan Mondal, who is coordinator of IQAC of SR Fatepuria College. And now I would like to invite Dr. Milan Mondal sir to deliver his talk on this event. Milonda, now it's to you.
নমস্কার। শিবনারায়ণ রামেশ্বর ফতেপুরিয়া কলেজের আইকিউসি এবং ইংরেজি বিভাগের যৌথ উদ্যোগে আজকের এই সেমিনারে সকলকে আন্তরিক অভিনন্দন এবং শুভেচ্ছা জানাই। সকলের উপস্থিতি এর জন্য আমরা কৃতজ্ঞ এবং সকলকে শুভেচ্ছা আরও জানাই যে এইরকম পরিস্থিতির মধ্যে দিয়ে আমরা একটা ওয়েবিনারের আয়োজন করতে পেরেছি। বিশেষ করে আমরা কৃতজ্ঞতা জানাচ্ছি ডক্টর রঞ্জিত কুমার স্যার এবং ডক্টর অভিজিৎ সেন মহাশয়কে। তারা মূল্যবান সময় আমাদের ওয়েবিনারের জন্য ব্যয় করছেন। এবং যে বিষয় রিথিঙ্কিং শেক্সপিয়ার ইন দ্য প্রেজেন্ট এরা, টেক্সট অ্যান্ড কনটেক্সট, এ বিষয়ে বিশেষজ্ঞ যারা রয়েছেন তারা তো বলবেন, কিন্তু বর্তমান পরিস্থিতিতে শেক্সপিয়ারের যে প্রয়োজনীয়তা বা প্রাসঙ্গিকতা সেটা আমরা সবাই অনুভব করি। বিশেষ করে আমরা যারা বিভিন্ন সাহিত্যের ক্ষেত্রে যারা আমরা পাঠদান করি বা চর্চা করি, তারা অবশ্যই স্বীকার করি যে শেক্সপিয়ারের যে ভাবনা চিন্তা এখনো যে আমাদের মধ্যে রয়েছে বা কাজ করে চলেছে, সেটা অধ্যাপক স্যাররা বলবেন। এবং এই ওয়েবিনারে যারা অংশগ্রহণ করছেন, আশা করি সকলে আমাদেরকে সহযোগিতা করবেন তাদের এই আমাদের যে প্রচেষ্টা সেটাকে এগিয়ে নিয়ে যাওয়ার জন্য। এবং ওয়েবিনার চলা পর্যন্ত আমরা অধীর আগ্রহে বিশেষজ্ঞদের আলোচনা আমরা শুনব। এবং আমরা এই ওয়েবিনারের আগাম যে সাফল্য কামনা করছি এবং ইংরেজি বিভাগকে অধ্যাপকদের সকলকেই কৃতজ্ঞতা জানাচ্ছি, ধন্যবাদ জানাচ্ছি, তারা এইরকম একটা আয়োজন করেছে। সকলকে শুভেচ্ছা জানাচ্ছি এবং ওয়েবিনারের আগাম সাফল্য কামনা করছি। এই বলে আমার সংক্ষিপ্ত বক্তব্য শেষ করছি।
Thank you, Milonda, for your valuable speech. And as you know that the title of our webinar is Rethinking Shakespeare in the Present Era, Text and Context. And today we have invited two speakers. First, Dr. Ranjit Kumar sir, and the next Dr. Obhijit Sen sir. So, Dr. Ranjit Kumar sir will begin the lecture. So, before handing the mic to him, I would like to introduce him to all of you. Dr. Ranjit Kumar sir is working as an assistant professor and head in the Department of English Studies in the Central University of Jharkhand, Ranchi. He has a teaching experience of more than 30 years in this university. He did his PhD on the novels of Amitabh Ghosh. He authored 2 books and contributed more than 25 articles in various national and international reputed journals. He delivered lectures in several national and international journals, seminars, as well as conferences. And the title of his talk for today's webinar is Revisiting Shakespearean Tragedy in the 20th Century. So, sir, now it's to you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhaskar, for your kind words. I'm quite happy to be here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, you are audible, but the sound, the frequency of sound is a little bit of low.
Okay, I'll try to be like a little louder.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
So thank you, Mr. Bhaskar, for your kind introduction, and I'm quite happy to be here for being invited as the speaker. Upfront, I would like to extend my warm regards to Professor Hasurbada, who represent Mr. Suhas Roy, who is the principal of SR Fatehpuria College, Dr. Milan Mandal, coordinator IQAC, Professor Abhijit, who would be soon addressing this august audience, and of course, Mr. Bhaskar, who is leading the charge from the Department of English, and all the staff members and the students of this esteemed institution. To begin with, I think what an occasion it is to remember the literary master Shakespeare. I reckon it is indeed an opportune occasion to pay our tribute to the great master, to the great bard, on his death anniversary. To talk about his universality, his timelessness, and his relevance, even after over 400 years. I think it is already 406 years. And here we are all gathered here to talk and listen about this great master. So we see that even over 400 years after his passing, Shakespeare remains relevant even in the present times. The reach of this playwright is extensive, and people from all over the world and globe, in all walks of life, they have read him, watched his plays, or have at least watched the screen adaptations of his work. Then the question is, why does the work of William Shakespeare continue to resonate with generation after generation, and why he remains so popular even in the present era, that is, in the 21st century? Different people from different cultures at different times, they see different facets and face of Shakespeare. Every time we read Shakespeare, we see a different perspective that come into focus. Who hasn't read or seen a performance of Hamlet or Shakespeare's Macbeth? There have been other English poets as well who have produced great works and have provided pleasures to our ears and to our hearts. But what is the difference between those poets and William Shakespeare? Say if we are asked to think of them, I mean those poets, or one of the dominant characteristics, for instance, name Spenser, and what do we remember? I'm sure we are all reminded of his Fairy Queen and the famous marriage hymns, that is Epithalamion and Prothalamion, which he has written. We name Dryden, and we think of the heroic couplet in satires and of the odes for music which he has written. When we name Pope, for instance, we think of the same heroic couplet brought to even finer polish in his satires and his epistles. We think of Wordsworth. When we think of him, it is the joy of nature, of high reflectiveness and a deep moral earnestness that we are reminded of. We name Coleridge, and what do we remember? I'm sure we are all reminded of the witchery of the supernatural. We name Shelley, and it is of the longing of the moth for the star that we are all reminded of. And when we name Keats, it is that beauty is truth, truth, beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know. So all these great poets which I've just mentioned or have just named, with their one voice, we can see they can sing one tune, or maybe in fortunate cases, with one voice, they can sing many tunes. But when we name Shakespeare, he seems to be able to sing all tunes. So in this talk, my endeavor, my effort would be to reflect on Shakespeare's plays in general and some of his tragedies, namely King Lear, Macbeth, Hamlet, and Othello in particular. Through such plays, I would like to underscore the reasons for his universality. What are there in his plays which have made him still relevant and popular, not just in the present times, but all the times, be it past, present, or future? So, Shakespeare undoubtedly is the world's most influential poet and dramatist, and that is why I think right in the beginning, Hasibuddha quoted that Ben Jonson's famous quote, who was Ben Jonson, who was Shakespeare's contemporary, who remarked that Shakespeare was not of an age, but for all time. Even today, Jonson's words still ring true. Shakespeare's skillful and psychologically astute characterization is utterly remarkable because it was written hundreds of years before the concept of psychology was invented. Shakespeare's collection of 154 sonnets is probably the most beautiful poems written in the English language ever. Shakespeare is best known for writing the greatest love story of all time, that is Romeo and Juliet. Thanks to Shakespeare, the name of Romeo will forever be associated with young lovers, and the play has become an enduring symbol of romanticism in popular culture. We all know that his tragedy, that is Romeo and Juliet, has entertained across the generations, and there has been endless stage versions and films, not just in English, that is Hollywood movies, but Bollywood and cinemas of other cultures as well. Actually, what I think is that Shakespeare was never specially relevant, and that is probably the secret of his longevity. If we compare and contrast him with much lesser but still great playwright like, say, George Bernard Shaw, to properly enjoy Shaw, you either need to have or you need to have lived through the period of 1890s to 1940s. We have to understand Shaw's age, the current of thoughts, say for instance, socialism and other thoughts which were prevailing at that time during Shaw's play. Not many people are into Shaw's plays these days, whereas Shakespeare, on the other hand, has been appealing to even those people whose knowledge of the rule of or the reigns of Elizabeth and James I is thin to almost non-existent. Then the question becomes, why is the average English literature student still studying Shakespeare today? The bard has not become obsolete because he wrote about human issues that have remained unchanged over the years. There are hardly any authors who can claim to be truly of universal significance whose work has stood the test of time, overcoming fashions, the passing fashions and the changing tastes. When we look at Shakespeare's plays now and analyze the reasons for William Shakespeare's relevance in contemporary world, we can see that, it is said that all great stories already have been written. It is nothing which has not yet been written. All the great stories have been written either by Greek authors of classical Greece or by Shakespeare himself. And all that modern writers can do is to rewrite them in a different setting. Because the fact is that all technology in the world cannot change the motivations, fears, and strengths and emotions of mankind. We may live in any period or century, but essential human feelings and emotions are not going to change anyway. They are always going to remain the same. So Shakespeare has left nothing. That is why people of different cultures and successive generations have found inspiration in Shakespeare's works and have decided to reinterpret again and again. Of course, one another reason is his contribution to the English language and the magic which he has, or which he has woven through, or which woven through his language. But even without the magic of his language, his tales have traveled well through space and time, across cultures, across generations, and even across mediums. The plays and the countless, the Shakespeare's play, I mean, and the countless transformations into dramatic movies bear witness to the universal appeal. A Russian Hamlet, a Japanese Macbeth, an Egyptian Lear, and a French Romeo. The list is endless. Shakespeare is vast enough to engender all of that and even more, even many more. What makes Shakespeare a worthy candidate of an enduring playwright is his connection of themes with modern reality, one that expresses important aspects of life, transcending time. The prominent themes which are universally explored in his plays, particularly tragedies, are justice, ambition, love, revenge, etc., and the connected themes like betrayal, greed, and madness. If we take, for instance, the case of King Lear, to see what we can take from this play, we see that King Lear in the play is undoubtedly a play of pain. It is a play of agony. And I would say that it is a play of avoidable disasters or human unfairness. As Gloucester, one of the characters in the play, states, as flies to wanton boys are we to the gods. They kill us for their sport. Gloucester soon realizes that his current era is one that does not comply with fair etiquette of human rights and justice. Rather, a world of unfairness like powerless wanton boys and undeserved cruelty. Humans are killed for enjoyment. Gloucester here outlines a sheer nihilistic theme that is present in the play, where he also makes us believe that gods provide no reason for his cruelty. The enduring feature in the connection of the theme justice with the modern world, with contemporary society now being overrun with injustices, which I think is suggested thoroughly in King Lear. That is human cruelty, which is based on political, cultural, and even racial agendas. This connection allows humans to develop an understanding of the consequences of cruelty and recognize mistakes suggested in King Lear. And at the same time, it also gives us, all of us, a lesson to avoid those mistakes which Lear himself had committed. Another theme which periodically develops is the theme of greed in the same play. The contemporary relevance is evident in the slowly progressive yet evident development into betrayal, madness, and then tragedy in King Lear. The relevance of these contemporary lives is extremely subtle, yet fully relevant. In King Lear and reality, political agendas are the most affected by this process of development. During King Lear, once the kingdom is divided amongst the daughters, greed soon follows. This leads to the betrayal of their father through events such as disallowing him to reside within his own home. The betrayal soon develops into madness, as suggested by the storm, which indicates Lear's inner turmoil, thus leading to tragedy and death. The connection of this theme with the modern era is prominent in being a timeless playwright. For example, in current political agendas, issues such as overtaxing citizens later leads to tragedy economically and politically. Shakespeare presents a plethora of compelling characters which not only share similar problems for modern day, but describe varying forms of character in the world. A noticeable factor in his play is that the characters have the same motivations, emotions, flaws, and weaknesses as members of a contemporary society. And this is an enduring factor. Many people can themselves see as a placeholder for King Lear, the protagonist who is lied and deceived by his own daughters. Furthermore, through characters such as Lear, society can both understand and avoid mistakes, which was suggested in the play. One of these mistakes include the test he had devised to measure his daughter's compassion for him, a motive which eventually led to tragedy. This test of love suggests that one cannot heave their heart into their mouths, a notion popularized in the present century, where love is expressed in a more non-verbal fashion, such as showing loyalty or compassion. This simply suggests that no matter what Cordelia in the play says, he will never fully understand her feelings for him. So Shakespeare, through his astounding depth of description in King Lear, devised a set of characters which not only represent similar human issues, but display similar emotions and mistakes to individuals in a contemporary society. Then the characters in Shakespeare's plays are very much like you and me, even though they may be kings, queens, or noblemen and women, but surely they are fallible in many ways, like Macbeth, who comes to grief because of ambition, or Hamlet, who struggles with the death of his father. One of the reasons that Shakespeare is said to be a writer of timeless literature is that his topics, and especially his characters, speak to a modern audience just as forcefully as they did when the bard himself was writing. If we look to Shakespeare's characters, we find that some of the men have the best of intentions, but are brought down by the evil of those around him, as seen in the case of Hamlet, the haunted prince of Denmark. And then we can also see the same thing in the case of Brutus in Julius Caesar. Hamlet wants to avenge his father's murder while avoiding the forfeiture of his eternal soul, because as killing a king, Claudius, was considered to be a mortal sin during those times. Our society is not without its villains, and we can see such is the person of Macbeth, who kills his king to become the ruler of Scotland. Shakespeare describes tyrants other than Macbeth: King Lear, who is tyrannical father, and Duke Frederick, who grasped at the rein of powers by usurping his own brother and exiling him. So the plays of Shakespeare are replete with various characteristics of man, how moral weakness can possess the mind and lead it to annihilation, and the question of moral choice in all issues and circumstances. So in particular, Shakespearean characters like Othello, Romeo and Juliet, Macbeth, King Lear, and Brutus, they are all noble in nature, yet they are all destroyed by their own emotional actions, which often lead to the destruction of those who are close to them as well. So here rises a question: what are those emotions? Undoubtedly, the characters become prey to the internal conflicts such as lust, desire, anger, greed, narrow-mindedness, emotional attachment, arrogance, envy, and jealousy. Maybe Shakespeare's take on inner conflict, or is it how he never portrays a hero as a perfect or a villain as all evil? There is certain universal truth about the human conditions in every story of his plays, whether it is the tragic outcome of unchecked greed and ambition, an unrelenting desire for revenge, or the pursuit of love. His representations of human nature is just as real and as relevant today as it has been through the centuries. Most of Shakespeare's characters are complex personalities which led into tragedy by their shortcomings. Even Shakespeare's heroes are never just heroes. Shakespeare tends to build his stories through false heroes such as Othello, Antony, and Brutus, and good villains or villains with a conscience and conscience like Macbeth, as Dr. Johnson once remarked. It is this type of inner conflict that makes Shakespeare's story so insightful and relatable. People love to identify with the hero. They like to think of themselves as heroes in their own lives, and the success of hero in a story makes them feel better about their chances of success in their own lives. While a hero may be the object of any story, a hero is only as great as the obstacles he can overcome, and that obstacle can be anything. But then the point which I'm trying to foreground is the human villain that develops and changes as the story unfolds. And that is the most relatable and therefore the most interesting obstacle to overcome. Maybe this is because, unlike other obstacles, villains share commonalities with the average person, but they are perverted by some sort of extremism, thus making them easy to hate but is still somehow relatable. So we can always relate ourselves with Shakespeare's villain. This is the point which I'm trying to foreground. So Shakespeare does a remarkable job when he creates relatable villains. Shakespeare's villains are not horrible people with no sense of humanity. Instead, they are very much complex. They are misguided characters. They are often more complex and deeper than his heroes. Shakespeare's villains are arguably, I think, the reason why Shakespeare's plays are so relatable and timeless. While most people might tend to classify characters into good and evil, but just like most of us are, Shakespeare's characters are rarely divided so neatly into good and evil. Macbeth is a great example of one of Shakespeare's characters that embodies both good and evil. He was once a respected man in the play, but gave into the temptation of great power uh, after being influenced by the person he respected the most, that is his wife, Lady Macbeth. Shakespeare plays on a universal fear of humanity, the fear of giving into temptation, by making Macbeth, who is essentially good man, who is wavering before succumbing to temptation. Shakespeare demonstrates that we are all capable of great wickedness in life, and consequently, we are all potential villains. So the fact that Shakespeare plays on such a universal fear is what makes Shakespeare's story of Macbeth so adaptable. A countless number of adaptations have been made worldwide, and they cover a very wide variety of cultures. Here, I would like to talk about one very famous one, that is Akira Kurosawa's Japanese adaptation of Macbeth, that is his very famous movie, that is Throne of Blood, which is one of the more well-known adaptations. I believe some of you may have seen this movie, which became quite famous, and even it is right now very famous. Generally speaking, adaptations often have to alter or change the core story significantly in order to translate well for other audiences. However, in the case of Shakespeare's Macbeth, it just happens to perfectly reflect the view that pride and personal ambition are negative qualities, which is a core value in Japanese society, which probably made it easier for the director Kurosawa to film an adaptation for a Japanese audience, that too with little alteration to the main story. For Macbeth, his ambition led to the betrayal to the main story. For Macbeth, we see that his ultimately, eventually, what happens that the betrayal and murder of Duncan, Banquo, Macduff's wife and children. So in the movie, that is Throne of Blood, Wasiju, who is the Macbeth's Japanese counterpart, he made the same mistakes that Shakespeare's character did. When the spirit in the forest, which is of course the representation of three witches, gave her prophecy to him and Mickey, another character in the movie, Wasiju, who is Hamlet in the play, Macbeth in the play, immediately began the same downward spiral that Macbeth made. So Wasiju seemed much less willing at the start than Macbeth did. The evil brought on by the ambition led to a psychotic break for both Lady Macbeth as well as her Japanese counterpart, that is Lady Asaji in Macbeth in Kurosawa's play. So ambition, political corruption, and the human folly are elements of the human condition which are never going to go away, and more than likely they will never will. I believe that Shakespeare's plays are still relatable and the themes can still connect with the 21st century. Macbeth itself has many themes that could connect with the themes and fundamentals of today. Some of his themes in Macbeth, we can see that they are relevant today is the corruption of power, then ambition and fate. All of these themes happen today in the 21st century, making this play very, very relevant at the present times. So ambition, say for instance, is when we have the determination or desire to want to achieve something, no matter how hard we have to work to get it. For example, in Macbeth, both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, they strive to be powerful and they are willing to do anything they can to achieve that goal, even if that means dishonorable. This is relevant today because ambition is a big key to living in the 21st century. If you do not have ambition, you will not be successful. So you have to want to get through college, work, school, or even the social event. That is, and even we have to make our careers. So therefore, if we have ambition, it will be a kind of a breeze getting through all these things. So ambition is a big theme and which connects Macbeth to the 21st century. And the internal conflicts through which the protagonist, that is Macbeth, undergoes could be very, very much the same kind of inner conflicts. It could be of our own as well. Whenever we do any wrong, we also undergo similar conflicts. Furthermore, Shakespeare, we see that he liked to blur the lines of good and evil. He portrayed the heroes and the villains as heroes. The lack of defined villain has caused numerous adaptations of his plays, each of which portray a different character as the villain. So what is it about Shakespeare's characters and stories that are so universal? What makes us able to relate in some way or another, even some 400 years after they have written? Regardless of the type of story, Shakespeare was always a keen observer of the human condition. His character portrayals displayed insights into human fears, shortcomings, and eccentricities. The fact is that even when Shakespeare's stories were not particularly profound, he always managed to engage the mind, heart, and other parts of the human psyche all at once. So Hamlet is relevant today for many reasons if we take this play Hamlet. One of the most important is that we still feel inspired to ponder the purpose of life and to wonder what we would do in horrendous circumstances, as Hamlet was itself fitted into the play. The tragedy of Hamlet is timeless in that respect. How would I respond if the woman closest to me, whom I loved, utterly betrayed me? How would I respond if my father challenged me to do something that would completely destroy me and yet was so obviously necessary that I couldn't avoid it, as it happened in the play? How could I live with myself in my actions caused the woman I love to kill herself? So through Hamlet's persona, Shakespeare deals with the conflict of every modern man. To a certain extent, we are all Hamlet in some way or the other. It is informed through different means that something is wrong in the kingdom of Denmark. Hamlet has come to attend his father's funeral, but he finds everything in chaos. His mother Gertrude has married with his uncle Claudius, and this has shaken his Hamlet's world of moral idealism. The incident throws him into a world of moral confusion. Hamlet strives to retain in the world of moral idealism, and this he does by fabricating a make-believe world around himself. This world has nothing to do with the actual world of action. He mourns over the evil ways of his evil world. The step taken by his mother has filled his mind up with poison for all women of the world. He generalizes women, as he says that in the play that frailty, thy name is woman, very famous quotation. So he's indignant with Claudius as well. The villainies of his ideal person changed his outlook completely. He's suspicious to everybody. His estimation about his fellow being is one may smile and still be a villain. He's as sensitive, Hamlet is as sensitive as a modern man. For the modern man is also living in the world of suspicion. So we are all living in suspicion. We find none, or they find none whose face is the real index of heart. People are cunning enough to hide their wickedness behind their artificial virtues. Owing to this hypocrisy, Hamlet starts despising the whole world and himself too. All the uses of the world become weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable for him. So Hamlet makes the world at its face value while it is completely otherwise. Man whom he once deemed to be God's supreme creation, that is very famously in the play, he said that he said something in praise of man, that what a creation man is. And now we see that it is no more for him. A man is as valuable, and now rather man for him is a quintessence of dust. So Hamlet's fractured way of thinking, that is to be or not to be, that is the question, resembles the modern man's way of thinking. Like Hamlet, the modern man is also confused. The opening words of Hamlet's soliloquy referred to show the crisis suffered by Hamlet and the modern thoughtful man at the different stages of human history. So therefore, the crisis has become very common phenomenon in the recent times, in the present times as well. The modern age is the age of indecisiveness. This state of indecisiveness has been brought out through Hamlet's character by Shakespeare. So when he says to be or not to be, that is the question. He seems to refer to the existence or non-existence of the number of things. So like Hamlet, the modern man also encounters the same trauma. Hamlet shows that his inactiveness is the root cause of his miseries, yet he is helpless to keep the balance between his thought and action. On the ground of various characteristic similarities, Hamlet is very much like a modern man. He epitomizes the anguish and anger suffered by modern sensitive man. So the angst of modernity is the angst of Hamlet himself. So the modern sensitive man sees around him the world marked by an all-round collapse of moral values. So similarly, when we look at Shakespeare's another play, that is Othello, we see that the theme of betrayal and jealousy is central to this play and is still alive in the present society as well. So this play, that is Othello, is a classic display of love that can appeal to the timeless audience. As the plot uncovers, readers can recognize the attitudes and methods of the modern society. One can easily track the consequences of jealousy and revenge in Othello. The characters themselves become the classic heroes of the modern movies. In particular, Iago, who is the typical villain, is one of the most popular characters in today's movies. He strives for revenge and gaining self-profit. That is one of the key morals of today. No wonder he can be easily recognized as a relevant hero. Another very important theme which can be seen in Othello is the theme of racism, which can which can be very relevant at the present time as well. So Othello faces the prejudice attitude because of his race during the whole story. Though he is the famous savior of Venice and honorable general, he is still despised by his own republic. Being a man of a color, that is, he was uh, the man of Moor. Othello experienced many difficulties. Just to name one, nobody believed that Desdemona, the women like Desdemona, who can truly love him. Instead, everybody wondered what kind of magic he uses to make her love for him. So, unfortunately, racism still pervades the contemporary society. This issues is often seen in the media and politics in the present times. So, though Black people have many rights today, they are still treated as unequal by some men. So, if we extend this theme further, we can see in the Indian society, again, the caste system plays quite an important role, wherein if the people, the if the boy and a girl, they are from different castes, then same kind of feeling is aroused, and same kind of feeling is shown by the people around in our society. So one more theme which is there is the conflict between an individual and his surroundings. So this theme is uncovered through the two different and contrasting worldviews of the two protagonists, that is Othello and Iago. Iago embodies egoistic society that looks only for personal gain. Despite the humanistic ideals of Renaissance, Iago distorts them for his own benefit. He loves only himself and persecutes only his interests and goals. Comparing to that, Othello is gullible, he is unsophisticated, he is a hero and is always ready to defend Venice. However, his character does not correspond to the aristocratic world and he is treated as an outsider there. Conflict with the surrounding leads Othello to kill himself, and it cannot leave the audience unaffected and undisturbed. So Shakespeare's tragedies evokes hatred towards the society, towards the society of Iago's, leaving the conflict between an individual and his surrounding unresolved. While humanistic ideals still prevail in the modern society, people identify themselves as Othellos or Iagos. After all, dealing with prejudice, betrayal, and jealousy in a hostile surroundings echoes with the modern ideals of a successful person. And that is why Othello still remains relevant to the modern times, to the modern days. So finally, I would say that the relevance of Shakespeare would remain timeless, and his relevance in the 21st century cannot be denied. He is popular today for all of the reasons I talked about here, and because he understands how a human mind works better than any other writer. So he portrays the most complex themes of human life with such ease and prowess. The way Shakespeare depicts murder, ambition, love, revenge, betrayal, hatred, they all flames the fire within our own souls. Our thoughts, our assumptions, and prejudices are constantly challenged by Shakespeare. He created profound and complex characters that are extraordinarily heroic, and they are irredeemably villainous as well. They are gut-wrenchingly tragic, and immediately we can identify ourselves with them. So, veteran Indian actor Nasiruddin Shah once said that he said that the roots may look lost, but every big story in the Hindi film industry is from Shakespeare. With the fusion of prose, blank verse, and poetry, Shakespeare remains woven into the fabric of the English language and will continue to be popular as long as time exists. So, William Shakespeare's poetry and particularly his plays are still among the greatest ever, and his work is unmatched in the history of the English language. It is no wonder that students around the world are still studying and reading his works, and it is only because of the high quality of his writing that his popularity has continued even to this day. So with that, I would like to wind up my lecture, and so over to you, Bhaskar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for such wonderful and thought-provoking lecture. And now I request the participants, if you have any questions, then you can write in the chat box, even in YouTube as well as in Google Meet. If you have any questions, do write in the chat box, and I will read out your questions to our sir. If you have any question regarding this lecture, feel free to post it on the chat box. No, sir. Actually, I could not trace any questions.
Okay.
So, sir, without wasting time, I again I again thank you for coming and delivering your lecture.
Thank
And
you.
now I would move to our next speaker, uh, Dr. Obhijit Sen sir. And about him, actually, he is like our grand teacher. Actually, he was the teacher of my teacher. My teacher, Dr. Soumipendra Banerjee, has done PhD under his supervision, and Dr. Obhijit Sen sir has retired from the Vishwabharati University. And to tell about him briefly, he was awarded the University Gold Medal for standing first in the first class in MA final examination in Jadavpur University. And after that, in 1999, he was awarded Charles Wallace Trust funding to attend international conference at Oxford University and pursue research work at Oxford, Stanford, and London. And about his teaching experience, he is associated with the teaching experiences. Before joining this university, he taught at Calcutta University. Before that, he taught at Vijaygarh Jyotish Rai College, and he has supervised a number of students during his service. And now, presently, he is also teaching in some of the university that is in Balurghat or something like that. So, sir, now it's to you.
Thank you, Bhaskar, for that kind introduction. But let me say, and I thank the organizers first for inviting me here, the organizers of SR Fatehpuria College. This is a great opportunity for me to be able to share some of my thoughts on this occasion, which is the Shakespeare Day. Yes, Shakespeare's death anniversary, but according to some scholars, maybe even his birth anniversary. According to many, it had coincided, 23rd of April. But without going into those debates right now, let me go into what I will be speaking about. I will perhaps take you a little back in time from where our earlier speaker, Dr. Ranjit Kumar, he had left off. He was talking about revisiting Shakespeare in the context of later times, which is definitely extremely important. But I would take you back to Shakespeare's own times. I will talk about texts of Shakespeare in the context of his times, because I think it is necessary to locate how the text worked in the socio-political, cultural, and most importantly, the theatrical context in which he lived. And I hope I will be able to impress upon you somewhat how in working in that particular way, these texts throw up different questions in different ways, which ultimately brings up the density of Shakespeare, the plurality of Shakespeare, which is exactly why Shakespeare keeps recycling himself over times and becomes a contemporary for any age that keeps recycling him. Okay, but first let's go back to that. And I have a kind of a PowerPoint presentation that please bear with me. I thought it would be easier if I put this before you. Bhaskar, will you please tell me after I put this on screen whether it is properly visible? So
No,
let
sir,
me
you are
share screen with you. No. I will, please bear with me. I will put it up on the screen and then please tell me.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Is it visible now? Is it visible, Bhaskar? Is that visible?
Yes, sir. Absolutely visible, sir. Your
Okay,
PPT is
okay,
visible,
thank
sir.
you.
Okay, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, sir.
So this is what I'm trying to address, Shakespeare, text and context. Okay, so let us talk about the text itself. You see, for the early modern dramatists, which include Shakespeare, there was no originary text, no particular definitive text. Shakespeare's own texts are recyclings of earlier source materials. In fact, of all the plays, maybe only one or two, we have not been able to find the exact sources. But for all the other plays of the 36 or 37 that comprise the Shakespeare canon today, all those plays have a particular source before it. Therefore, if you take up something like Macbeth, there is Holinshed. If you take up something like King Lear, there is Holinshed, and there is the earlier King Lear play. Therefore, all these plays have some particular source prior to Shakespeare's own version. Actually, one must remember that from the time of the Greeks to the time of the Renaissance lie in inventiveness. The idea of originality lay in interpretation. Therefore, a known story is being reinterpreted. If Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, they did it, Shakespeare also does it. So do all his contemporaries. So they are continuously recycling a text, and therefore the text itself remains very fluid. The text was, mind you, commissioned by the company to write the play text. And therefore, the company became the proprietor of the text, the theatre company, not the author. There was no copyright hold. And when a text had been even performed, it could again be revised, reworked upon by the same author, by any other author commissioned by the company. For instance, the Macbeth text that we read is not Shakespeare's text. It is a text which has survived in the first folio, but which was revised by Middleton. There are several clues in the text itself, which scholars have hunted down to make this finding. I'm not going into them again, but therefore, where was Shakespeare's original text? We don't know. The Shakespeare has remained continuously fluid. And all the more because Shakespeare's generations were not interested in reading the text on the page. They read the text on the stage. And in performance, the stage could continuously keep changing. There have been revisions, there have been reworkings, and therefore the text itself always remained so very fluid. And therefore there are multiple versions of the text coming up. You see, when the author gave his text to the company, the manuscript, they were called the foul papers, from which scribes were employed by the companies to make out several copies. These are the several scribal copies. Then, from the scribal copies, they picked up copies, they cut them in pieces, they again joined them together according to individual roles. Therefore, Hamlet has his text giving his roles and the cues only of the other roles. You see, he did not get the whole text. Gertrude similarly did not get the whole text. She, there was no lady, of course, got only the role of Gertrude. That was the text. The idea was to prevent any actor from running away with the full text to a rival company. There was tremendous cutthroat competition between the companies, the theatre companies, and therefore the actors' copies were only truncated copies. There was one full copy, which was kept as a prompt copy, kept by the bookkeeper, where the bookkeeper made his marginal notes. Okay? Therefore, Hamlet is to enter at line 15. The bookkeeper who's standing at the door, perhaps 15 lines before that, writes another Enter Hamlet to warn himself that he needs to keep the actor playing Hamlet close by the door so he could be ushered in. That is the prompt copy with the bookkeeper's or the prompter's marginal notings. One copy would have to be sent to the master of the revels for censorship. We will come to the censorship problem later, but the master of the revels had to go through the text to see if there was any unnecessary or libellous or seditious material that should be expunged. Now, any or several of these could become sources for the printed text. We don't know which was the printed text, which was the source for the printed text, and therefore several different printed texts of the same plays could have survived, and in fact did survive. Therefore, there was no one definitive version of the text, and the text was more of a theatrical script. I mean, it was a text which the author gave the actors to act out. It was not meant as a literary work initially. And when it was printed, it went to the stationer's register to claim its rights to print. And then it could be printed in any one of these different forms. It could be printed as a quarto, where the sheet was folded twice. It could be printed as an octavo. Othello was printed as octavo. The others usually as quarto. Only for very important works, the folio format was used, where the sheet was folded only in half to give 2 leaves. And it's reserved only for very, very important works, like works. And Ben Jonson, who was the only person who kept one copy surreptitiously for himself when he gave away the actual copy to the company. You see, when the company took hold of the copy, the author did not have any copy with him. Ben Jonson was the only exception. And he collected all his copies together, and in 1616, he printed his works in a folio version. And there was a lot of joke going around. This line came up: "Pray tell me, Ben, where doth the mystery lurk? What others call a play, you call a work." So what was this great work that you're printing? Because they were accustomed to having the plays in the quarto forms, or maybe at best the octavo forms. The Shakespeare folio, the first folio, comes up 7 years after his death. It is edited, I would say, by his 2 friends, Hemming and Condell. They take the initiative to bring out his plays. And there are several plays which appear for the first time in the first folio. No corresponding quarto version exists. For instance, Macbeth. For instance, As You Like It. If the first folio was not printed by the initiative of Hemming and Condell, we would have lost those plays. So 1623 was the first folio, and then 3 other folios followed. I've given you the dates there: 32, 64, and 85. Obviously, therefore, there can be variant readings. The quarto and the folio gives different readings. For King Lear, for instance, absolute substantive variations. Whole scenes are missing in the folio, which had appeared in the quarto. Why? What happened? Who revised? Maybe Shakespeare? Maybe some later dramatist? There are even corruptions in the earlier text. For instance, Hamlet Quarto 1. All these Quarto 1 texts that I mentioned here are supposed to be corrupted texts. So Hamlet, Henry V, Romeo and Juliet, Revised Hamlet, and others. Corruptions could come in through piracy. I told you there was cutthroat competition. One company was staging a play, it was a hit. A rival company would send down its agents, they would memorize lines, even as they were saying the plays, and they would go back and jot down those lines, like sometimes many enthusiastic youngsters today would go to the Hindi film and get their lines memorized in the head, and they could remember those lines. Similarly, these are spies, professional spies sent by a rival company to get those lines. The Hamlet Quarto 1, 1603 is a pirated quarto version. That is proved now by the scholars. Therefore, very quickly, Shakespeare's own company produced the Quarto 2 the very next year, 1604, saying, "As diverse times acted by the Lord Chamberlain's men." The Lord Chamberlain's men was Shakespeare's company at that time, before it became King's Men. That is the quarter 2, the Revised Hamlet. There could sometimes be memorial reconstruction even without piracy. For instance, there is a theory that during a provincial tour, the company had forgotten to take the Lear text with them. And they asked the boy actors to sit down together and memorially reconstruct the text from memory. And therefore, the lines of the lady characters are more or less intact. But there is tremendous problem with the lines of the men characters. This might have appeared because of memorial reconstruction. Therefore, all kinds of possibilities of these substantive variations. Then a scribe or a printer is not very highly educated. When he cannot understand the handwriting of the original author, and the original author was not necessarily writing in very legible handwriting, therefore he does not understand a word, he does not understand a particular kind of sentence or construction, he puts in whatever he thinks was there. So all kinds of different versions from the original version creep into the text. Sometimes, as in Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare wrote a particular passage, then he rewrote that passage and forgot to delete the earlier passage. The printer, poor thing, did not know this difference, and so both passages have gone into print together. Okay, so all these kinds of errors bring in variant readings, substantive variations. But the point is, even when they are corrupt or pirated texts, we know them, that they are corrupt texts, they cannot be discarded because of other historical reasons. For instance, the first Henry VI play of quarter 1 is not actually called Henry VI Part 1. It is the contention between the two houses of York and Lancaster. The second part of Henry VI is not called second part of Henry VI. It is called the tragedy of Richard, Duke of York. For long, scholars have thought that these were source plays of Shakespeare's plays. Later they realized these are earliest versions of the second quarter versions of these plays. You see, and they restored them. Obviously, they are corrupt versions for whatever reason, but they cannot be discarded. There could be much material there, like in the King Lear play, like in the Hamlet play of the quarter 1, and you cannot discard them. There is much material which you fall back upon, though the Hamlet quarter 1. If an agent from a rival company was noting down the details, then he would be noting down details of staging. So in a way, it is an eyewitness account of the staging of Hamlet. Therefore, how the staging was done, those come into the stage directions of the quarter 1. Of course, after that, there were the later emendations, 18th century onwards. We don't go into that. I'm talking about Shakespeare's own times primarily. And you see already there are so many different kinds of readings that are possible. So what is the text? Which is the text? And what is the context? The context, of course, is the theater, as I said, where it would be played. But the theater is a place where meanings are made, but meanings are also contested. For instance, as one might see in the history plays, you are never sure whether Shakespeare is a monarchist or Shakespeare is an anti-monarchist. Is Shakespeare with King Henry IV? Or is Shakespeare with Falstaff? Hal is oscillating between the two. What is Shakespeare's position? And he's leaving it to you. You are free to read your version. That is exactly where, again, relating back to Dr. Kumar's lecture, Shakespeare becomes so relatable, even in his own times. Different people can tease out different meanings out of his texts. But because meanings can be contested, I mean, the authorities may want one kind of meaning to come out of the text. For instance, we are usually told that the Macbeth play is a play written to champion the cause of the then Stuart monarch, James I. And the particular scene that is chosen for this is the scene of the Banquo Kings, which the Weird Sisters show to Macbeth. The Banquo Kings, therefore the antecedents of the Stuart monarch. But the problem is, we have a mention of 8 kings making a procession. Where is Mary Queen of Scots, who was immediate predecessor of James I? Mary Queen of Scots was the mother of James I when he was James VI. Where is she in that procession? Why does she not appear there? Why is she left out? Would it be uncomfortable to bring her in? We don't know. But that very absence of Mary Queen of Scots opens out so many questions. And it might be uncomfortable for even the administration. If people start, questioning these problems. You must remember that there was no newspaper as such at that time. The theatre was a place where people could actually see the plays and see them, how they were commentaries on immediate topical subjects. 1605, there is tremendous amount of discontent between the English subjects and the Scottish subjects after James came to the throne, combining the English and the Scottish realms. And there is again talk about dividing the kingdom. And Shakespeare writes King Lear, the problem of division of the kingdom. People are unhappy, and there is even an attempt to kill the king. The Guy Fawkes plot, the problems of regicide, killing the king. You see how very topical these plays were, how very political these plays were. And therefore, the authorities were not very comfortable with theatre. Theatre can bring up very volatile, in a very volatile manner, questions that are uncomfortable for authorities to answer. Therefore, particularly the church and the London municipality were up in arms against the theatre. There were desperate attempts to control the plays, to contain the plays, even to prohibit the performances. For instance, at times earlier on Sundays and religious occasions, performances would be given. The church became very angry. People are not coming to the church, they're going to see theatres. Therefore, performances were later banned on Sundays and religious occasions. Plague was spreading and became a headache for the municipality. So many people gathering together within a closed enclosure. Plagues will cross the mark, the limit. Therefore, whenever the plague deaths crossed a particular mark, the theatres were banned. Pushed to the margin, liberties, they were of the municipality. The companies themselves decided to build the theatre houses jurisdiction of the municipality, but not so far away that the Londoners could not reach them. The censorship hurdles, as I said, if there were seditious, libellous, or irreligious passages, they had to be, practitioners also had their own. They were continuously trying to say performances are only rehearsals, ultimate performance before the king or the queen. That was their strategy. And in their own way, sometimes covertly, sometimes overtly, they were trying to bypass the administration's control and even subvert or question the status quo. Okay? This is because theatre cultural imperatives, even political imperatives, which condition the theatrical event. The theatrical event does not happen in the void. as I said just now, that political topics, social topics, were being directly inscribed by these ideological underpinnings, as I said. Is Shakespeare with Falstaff, or is Shakespeare with Henry? And then at the end of second part of Henry IV, Prince Hal, who has been such a great friend of Falstaff, and Falstaff thinks now that he has become king after the death of his father, Falstaff will have his own way all the time. And Prince Hal, becoming King Henry V, at the end of part 2 of Henry IV play, actually rejects Falstaff. He says, "Old man, I don't know you." He rejects Falstaff. And then one is shocked. And one realizes for him to tolerate Falstaff of misrule. Falstaff is the epitome of vice. As a king who must actually control, who must actually be the administrative head, he cannot bring Falstaff within his retinue as king. So you see, these ideological underpinnings Hello, I'm sorry, something happened at my end and things got delayed. Anyway, I'll go back to my presentation again. Ashkar, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am here, sir.
Yeah, so there was a disturbance. So
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. No issue, sir.
Yeah. I'm so sorry about this.
Okay, sir. Now your
Is that
PPT is visible, sir. Yes, sir.
right?
Okay, sir.
So as I was saying, the theater works as an ideological transaction. Okay? As I was saying, King Lear, for instance, if you think of King Lear, yes, is it the tragedy of an individual? No. Is it a tragedy of a family? No. Along with King Lear, there is something happening to Gloucester and Gloucester's family. Therefore, this parallelism actually shows there is a problem in the entire society. There is a social problem. It's not right. I'm having problems at my end. হ্যাঁ, আবার কি গন্ডগোল হয়েছে? হ্যাঁ, না এখন দেখা যাচ্ছে। হ্যাঁ, ওকে। এখন ঠিক আছে কি? Can I? Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry because of this disturbance that is happening. But anyway, the whole point is that we come to the bottom of that slide. The whole question that becomes or questions that are at stake is what is being produced? By whom is it being produced? For whom is it being produced? Where is it being produced? And most importantly, why is it being produced? Because you see, it's a production reception transaction between two groups. One group is producing the event, the other group is receiving the event. And all this is determined by this ideological underpinning. Okay, so what is being produced? King Lear. By whom? King's men. For whom? The Renaissance audiences. Where? At the Globe. Why? Why did they choose to produce King Lear? Maybe because of the division of the kingdom, maybe because of the problem of power, or whatever, maybe because of the social upheavals that were going on. You could ask the same questions with a different King Lear. Why did, say Macbeth, why did B.V. Currant choose to do his Yakshagana Macbeth? I'm concentrating on the why question, because he transferred Macbeth in the Yakshagana form, B.V. Currant, for Ennis reproduction. You see, therefore, ultimately, the whole question of the theatrical performance will be determined by these particular questions. Okay, but let me get back to Shakespeare and the next slide. This is the way the public theatre came up in England. 1576 with James Burbage's theatre, the first custom-built public theatre. There was an earlier aborted attempt. Now, mind you, when it's custom-built public theatre, the medieval theatres were only seasonal for particular religious rituals, built in inn yards or marketplaces. Here is a theatre at a particular point where people can come to the theatre and performances can be held through the entire year. Theatre becomes very good business, and there is immediately professionalism in this kind of theatre. People can live by writing for the play, by acting in plays, by producing plays, so on and so forth. This is a list of the later theatres, the Curtain, Rose, Bear Garden, etc. The Globe 1599 is, of course, Shakespeare's own theatre. Before they moved to Globe, they were playing at the Curtain, 1577. And the theatre was Burbage's theatre. This is a London map showing how the theatres were located. And if you can see my cursor on the slide, here is the Globe. You see, the theatres are located in the Liberties. This is the wall of the London town or city. Beyond that, to the north, in Shoreditch, some of the theatre houses were built. Here is the theatre, right at the top. Red Bull, Fortune will be built later after the Globe. And to the south of the Thames, which is called Bankside, another Liberty, another group of theatres came up, the Globe, the Rose, the Swan, the Bear Garden, so on and so forth. Okay? Now, what was the structure of these theatres? There was a thrust-out apron stage with doors at the back. There was a balcony in the galleries. There were 3 tiered galleries running all around the polygon shape. And behind the stage also, there was the galleries, and that was used as what was called balcony. Not really balcony, but anyway, that part. There were trapdoors on the stage floor. Anything below the stage floor represented hell. And there were trapdoors above on the sky, which represented heaven. Anything coming down from the top was coming from heaven. We have 3 kinds of material evidences to show the structure of the theatres: the Swan drawing, the Fortune contract, the stage directions, in fact 4, and the Rose Excavation. Here is the Swan Theater, 1595. This is a sketch made by Johann de Witt, who saw a performance at the Swan in 1596 and made a sketch. That sketch, of course, is lost, but the sketch surviving, which was made by his friend, Arend van Bushel, that is this. Now, if you can again follow my cursor, there are 2 doors at the back. There are 2 doors at the back. Am I audible? Am I visible? Okay. Should I continue? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Continue, sir.
Can you hear me? Can you see me?
You are audible, sir. Sometimes your voice
I
is
mean, my
breaking.
slide. Okay, okay. Bhaskar, if there is any point where you cannot see or hear me, please tell me.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, okay, okay. So this is the Swan Theater. These are the two doors at the back. Here is the balcony, so-called balcony, on the top of the two doors. And there the musicians would be sitting, and for certain scenes above, aloft, that area would have been used. The galleries run all around, three-tiered galleries, okay? Anything below the stage would be representing hell. Anything above the stage would be representing heaven. Therefore, the stage itself was the earth, the globe, okay? This is the fortune contract when 1599 Peter Street built the globe for the Chamberlain's men. The Admiral's men, the rival company, got hold of Peter Street to build the fortune for them. And the contract has survived, which contains specific details. But contrary to the polygonal shape of the other playhouses, fortune was made as a square plate, so not very large. And the interior measurements were 55 feet by 55 feet. So the 25 feet in between was for the galleries. And within this, any point of time in any day, something between 1,500 to 2,000 people would be squeezed in. In the globe, which was a little bigger, between 2,000 to 2,500. There were so many people in the enclosure of the theater. One realizes why the administration had a headache for this. Any point of time, there could be a law and order problem. There could be an outbreak of plague. There could be other problems. And it was, mind you, performances were happening in the daylight. Performances started at 2 o'clock and ended by 5 o'clock. Therefore, everybody was seeing everybody else. Even as they were responding to the actors on the stage, they would be responding to other audiences, other spectators. And if there was any kind of a volatile experience, it would simply, it would simply spread through the entire playhouse. Everybody would start sharing that experience. This was a danger for the administration. And that is why they continuously tried to clamp down on the theater. Anyway, the fortune contract mentions the stage, the thrust out stage, would be 43 feet in length with 25 feet in width. Therefore, of the 55 feet interior, 25 feet into that yard, the stage would be thrust out. The galleries are three-tiered. There is a tiring house, meaning a tiring house, the dressing rooms, which would be behind those two doors. The place behind the stage would be reserved for the actors to use as the dressing rooms. There's apparently a diagram with this fortune contract. Unfortunately, that is lost. There are stage directions from where also we can glean some ideas. Enter by one door, enter by another door. This is in several plays. There must be at least two plays. The French leap over the walls. Something high, therefore. Enter on the walls, general of the French forces. Both these two are from Richard II. Enter Juliet aloft, Romeo and Juliet. Enter Brabantio above, Othello. In Macbeth, the apparition, it's not said it rises, but apparition descends. It descends to the go below the stage. Therefore, when it came up, it did suggest that it is coming from hell. In Coriolanus, you have this very interesting stage direction. Enter two officers to lay cushions, as it were, in the Capitol. Therefore, they bring in cushions and it becomes the Capitol. It becomes the hall of the Senate. In Cymbeline, you have that stage direction. Enter Jupiter riding an eagle. So if he's coming from the top, from above, riding an eagle. Incidentally, for a Greene play, a Robert Greene play, there was an interesting similar stage direction. Exit Venus, or if you conveniently can, let a chair come down from the top of the stage and draw her up. You see, therefore a chair would come down and Venus would sit on it and it would be drawn up again. Therefore Venus is ascending to heaven. This is of course not from Shakespeare. This is from a Robert Greene play. But stage directions therefore also give us an idea of the plays, the stage was structured. The theatres were structured. This is the Rose Excavation. In 1989, this excavation happened in London. You see, there was an earlier building, and you can see those concrete pillars, which were the pillars of that building. And when that building was demolished, supposed to come up on the site, scholars had a hunch that beneath that, foundations of the Rose Theatre. So they stopped, they brought a stay order from court, they stopped the new building, and sure enough, the foundations of the Rose Theatre were located there. You see, and you have these two walls showing where the galleries were there. You have this part of the stage. The stage was renovated and extended later on in the Rose. And this is part of the excavation, which again confirms the idea of the way these theatres were. And this is the new, which has been built at the Bankside. The Globe's site has not been excavated. The building still now on the, but near it, on a different site, back, these curtains, yet another door. There is Yes, I'm sorry. I'm continuously getting disconnected. I will try and get back there. I'm extremely sorry for this. So we were here. I'm moving to the next slide, assuming that it is visible and audible. So as I was trying to say, in the production, reception, and English Renaissance theaters, the theater companies were more important than the authors at all. Authors became the process of production. It was just it was the actor. আমি আরেকবার আসছি। হ্যাঁ, 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 ঠিক 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 আছে, আমি একটু দেখছি তাহলে। হ্যাঁ, দেখছি। ওকে, থ্যাংক ইউ। I'm so very, very sorry about this. Yes, I just wanted to put in a word about the boy actors, since they.
Yes, sir. Now the slide is visible, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Oh.
Since female actors were not available, boys were used for female roles whose voices are not broken. But as I was trying to say, the church was extremely angry with the convention of cross-dressing, that boys should dress up as girls. Something irreligious, because gender roles supposedly fixed the fixity of the gender roles being broken in the theatre was something that the church frowned upon. Women obviously were played by the boys to guys, men and boys. Think of As You Like It, Rosalind. Rosalind is actually a boy actor. Dresses as the girl Rosalind, takes on the role of Ganymede, a boy who pretends to be a girl. Rosalind and Orlando to her. Several rules to which Rosalind sings. Similarly, were available.
Extremely sorry for the technical glitches, and I have contacted sir, and the sir will be joining very soon through his mobile. And now I think this disturbances will not occur. So please stay with us.
I suppose I'm audible and visible now.
Okay, sir. Now absolutely audible, sir, and
Yes,
perfectly visible, sir.
I will not share the screen. I will just have it in front of me and go on with
Okay, sir.
whatever
Okay,
bit I
sir. No
wanted to
problem,
say.
sir. Thank you, sir.
Right. So as I was saying, there are stage settings, there are night settings. There is the the change of scenes, an open stage curtains without any kind of trick lighting. How was the scene change? Emptying of the stage really denoted a change of scenes. Okay. Therefore, something of the Roman toga but Tamora is wearing something like draperies in the Elizabethan fashion. The Elizabethan fashion is also in the costume of the soldiers. Therefore, a kind of mixed costuming was going on. And it was basically an allusionistic theatre. And therefore, with boy actors playing a chair, potted plants standing. You even had a robe going visible in among the headpapers. For all these acts show how the theatricality of this stage world was continuously foregrounded. And this fictional world was actually based in front of the audiences. They were actually aware of that. They had a kind of what scholars have called the double-eyedness. They knew it was theatre, and yet they accepted it as real. This was interesting about the English Renaissance theatre. I was with all kinds of technical glitches that I've run into and spoiled the show, but I hope I could get something. Thank you very much. Bhaskar. So, if there are any questions, be glad to on whether you want to
Okay,
ask
actually,
me by voice.
yes, sir, I am here, sir. But actually,
Whatever.
these technical glitches is beyond our control, so we cannot do anything in that. Apart from that, the lecture was very much interesting, very much informative, and there is no doubt that by hearing this lecture, we will get to know very minutely about the theater, about the theater politics in the time of Shakespeare, and about the various versions of Shakespeare's plays. But I will try to share the PPT when sir will be sharing with me. And now, if you have any question regarding this lecture, or that means the theater time, plays versions of Shakespeare, then you can post it in the chat box, even in YouTube as well as in Google Meet. Then I will forward this question to the respected speakers. Hello, sir. Are you here, sir? Hello, sir.
I'm back.
Actually, there is a very interesting
Yes,
question. Uh, I think, am I audible to you, sir?
please,
There is a very interesting question that was asked by
please,
Sarvani Ghosh, that Vishal Bharadwaj Shakespeare trilogy, Makbul, that is Macbeth, Omkara,
yeah.
Othello, Haidar, Hamlet, as Shakespearean reader, what you think, how much he did justice with the true essence of the three?
Uh, think about truths. Very, there's no escape. I do not believe in escape. There is a you can do all kinds of meanings out of essence right at the usually contemporize your own cultural Shakespeare when Vishal Bharat is reworking these texts of Shakespeare, they are and are text. But anyway, can you hear Bhaskar, please?
Yes, sir. Actually, sir, your voice was breaking tremendously, sir. Okay. That's why I
No,
think
no,
we could not
there is
able to get
serious
you.
problem with my net.
Okay, okay, sir. No, sir. This is beyond our control,
Actually,
sir. It may happen, sir. No issue, sir. No issue, sir. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you
yeah.
very much for attending, for responding to my call and presenting here a wonderful lecture. But unfortunately, due to the technical issues, this perfection has not reached. But by the next time, we will try, sir. And thank you, sir. And on behalf of the Department of English, SR
Thank
Fatehpuria
you.
College, I appreciate each and every participant for their passions. Actually, network glitches is something that cannot be controlled, and somehow it happened today, and hope to rectify it in future. So thank you for very much for attending the webinar and making it a grand success. And the feedback link has already been shared. So I request all of you to fill up the feedback link so that they will get their certificate within a couple of weeks. Okay. Thank you. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank
Stay safe.
you. Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you.